Well, hello, fellow educators. I would like to try to, in just a couple minutes, talk about merging the analog and the digital worlds inside of your classroom. And this is something that is often very, very difficult because you're bringing technology into your classroom and you have all these aspirations and goals of what you would like that to look at. But the actual process of getting to where maybe in your head you envisioned it going and where you're starting out with seems like a daunting task. And so I wanted to kind of break this into some phases and talk about it. I'm going to try to keep it as quick as possible. First, I'd like you to think about this. Russell Kirsch is the inventor of the first internal programmable computer, and he says a few things. Nothing is withheld from us which we have not conceived to do. Do things that have never been done, and computers should be used to make things, not consume things. And I really think that last part is an essential piece to your integration of technology into your classroom. We need to move the students from being consumers to creators, and that is a process, not something you can just hit the ground running and do it in one day. So if you can move from the integration phase of technology in your classroom to the application phase, you will begin to see your students move from being consumers to creators and contributors. And I would like to talk with you about that a little bit. I have this chart. You probably can't see it very well. I'll post it online for you. So if you have more questions about it, I can answer that for you. But essentially, here's what it is. We have the analog and the digital world. And inside of that, we're going to bring technology. We're going to put that technology into there. And in the integration phase of technology, we're essentially doing things that we could already do in the analog world, such as word processing, a web browser, ebooks. These are all things that we could technically do in the analog world. Now, they might be a superior tool to the old way of doing things, but essentially it only offers a slight advantage in our classroom over what the analog world has done. And unfortunately, most schools are at this phase one stage of their integration, and that's where we run into some problems with technology eventually going away, and where we don't use it past the initial response. You know, we get that technology in, we bring it into our school building, we're all excited about it, and then it sort of dies off, and in a few years we're back to doing our worksheets. That's the integration phase of technology. Our goal as a school should be move along into this application phase of technology. The application phase is doing things that could not be done in the analog world. This would be stuff like computer coding, making movies, doing stuff with Photoshop. These are all concepts that without a computer could not be done, some at all, and some without any kind of resemblance to the analog counterpart. Phase two is kind of this intermediate step, and I think phase two is something that iPad technology in particular, these tablets, has created a way for teachers to kind of move into phase two much more rapidly. Phase two would be things like using Excel spreadsheets, because if you think about an Excel spreadsheet, I could technically do that in the analog world. It wouldn't be anywhere close to how well I can do it in the digital world. So it kind of is a hybrid of the application and the integration. It's not quite a phase three thing because I could still do it in the analog world, but it's something that is significantly advanced. The other area I would say that we can do that would be phase two with an Apple or an iPad or a tablet of some kind is we can create applications, or we can find applications that allow us to give instant feedback to students. That is something that really starts to move us down this path where the students are a little more inspired, but when you're doing a math problem and you're getting instant feedback on that math problem, you're essentially in a phase two. So you're moving down that chain to phase three. If you can get your students to this part in your classroom, the technology now becomes something that is so important to you, you would never think about putting it aside. In fact, if you're missing the technology at this phase, work pretty much stops. You're actually stuck. You don't know what to do because the technology has become a crucial component to creating the type of quality product that you want your students to actually build for you. This is extremely immersive. It requires prerequisite computer skills, a lot of content knowledge, and some high-level thinking. Phase one, on the other hand, is going to be something that is going to be easy to integrate. It's going to require minimal support. It's going to be a lot of drill work, investigation, that type of stuff, where the digital world over here in application phase is very immersive. It's going to require a lot of prerequisite skills. It's going to require a lot of high-level thinking. So let's just talk a little bit more about that. So phase 0 is actually really a phase, and it's just basically throwing them in front of a TV. That's something that you're delivering content to students through technology. But to be honest with you, it's actually the same as giving a lecture. So there's really not a lot of advancement over the analog world. You're simply allowing the TV to do the instruction instead of the teacher. Phase 1, however, starts to be much more involved, because now I'm starting to get a little bit of technology in my classroom that's making a difference. And in this example with this picture here is that typing a paper for history class, I spelled Czechoslovakia right on the first try, right? It allows us to do something that maybe we couldn't do with the technology, but in phase 1, everything that you do in itself will not necessarily make such an impact that you will say, man, I just hope I have those iPads in my classroom today. You actually in phase 1 will say, well, if I don't have the iPad, I'll just go ahead. We'll just write it on paper. It's no big deal. We can still do that. And that's really where schools that only get to phase 1 or maybe a little bit into phase 2 integration eventually break down, and they no longer want the technology because they don't value the investment, because they can do it on paper. So it's very consumer level. It's resource heavy. The tools mimic the analog world. Creation at this level is only slightly different than analog attempts, if it's different at all. Phase 2 starts to become a little more exciting, because the application itself is giving us something. The application is helping with the instruction. The application is helping facilitate the learning. So in my example, if a student says 3 plus 3 is 7, and they write that down on a piece of paper, and they write it down maybe 25 times, it could be 48 hours before they get a response saying 3 plus 3 is not 7. The technology offers us a superior advantage in the sense that 3 plus 3 is going to be corrected by the technology saying 3 plus 3 is 6. And then the student now knows that. They got that instant feedback. It provided a little bit of a benefit to the teacher. And so now we start to say, ooh, I kind of need the technology in my classroom a little bit more, because phase 2, I'm relying on it. That's a little bit more important for me. So prerequisites start to be required at phase 2. So when you're teaching with technology and you start to use these apps, you have to also think about, how am I going to instruct them how to use the application? You can't just go into a classroom and expect your students are going to know how to use the application. You're going to need to do some additional prep work in phase 2, but you might get something back from that effort. It's very assistive instruction oriented. It's teaching software skills with partial guidance that's going to be required, increased engagement. Students begin to feel like they have the desire to do more. It's not uncommon in a phase 2 application for a student to grab that thing and want to go all day on it, because it starts to get more engaging. And as we get to phase 3, it gets very engaging, because phase 3 is creativity. Everything in phase 3 becomes about what you can build, what you can make, what you can design. It's solving real-world problems. Students that reach phase 3 with technology are doing more advanced critical thinking, higher level learning, and these are really kids that are working outside of the box. Let me give you an example here with the computer programming. If I had an algebra class that said, hey, I would like you to solve this algebraic equation, the students would begin working on that. They could do it. They might even use assistive technology to help them, so they might be in phase 2. They're still just answering the question that was given to them. In phase 3, a classroom instructor might say, hey, make a program that will complete that problem. Now, you are actually asking the students to know how to work that problem so well that they can create the solution in a software program. High level thinking, very engaging, extremely exciting for the student. So it's immersive. There's high level thinking skills. Students at this level create things that cannot be duplicated with analog tools. It's mastery specific. It requires extra guidance, and it starts to take shape outside of the box. things that are done in phase 3 tend to leave the computer, whether it be 3D printing or the computer program goes out to the internet for everybody to look at. Phase 3 starts to become really, really exciting for the teacher and the student. And it's the type of activities that students will talk about for years and years to come. If you get to phase 3 with your education plan, you will have students that will not only use the technology that you're given, but they will actually be like, where is it? I have to have it. I can't work without it. In fact, if it's missing or not working that day, they might actually stop working altogether. But it's extremely rewarding and very, very exciting. So that was the real quick overview of what this process kind of looks like. And as an educator, if you have other questions, you can always visit my blog and ask me some of those things. I also give these presentations at Legacy Academy fairly frequently. So if you'd like to come in and sit on an entire session or day training, please contact us at legacyk8.org, and we'd be happy to schedule something for you so that we can help you learn all about how you can integrate technology into your classroom instruction.